little kids, and everybody was really nice, and we got a paycheck for it. How cool is that? So I started to do more auditions, and I started to get more commercials, and again, I really felt like it was because I had the look, and I wasn't afraid of people, and my mother was not in case anyone's wondering, my mother was not a pushy stage mom. She was quite the opposite. She was very laid back and kind of just took it all in stride, and oh, this is fun, let's do this, which I think really had a good effect on me. I didn't feel stressed, I didn't feel pressured. I wasn't like what I hear the little kids on those, Toddlers and Tiara. That was not my experience at all. I was very normal. Well, I was treated very normal as a little kid, and I had to do my homework, and I had to go to bed at a certain time and that kind of thing. But it was a fun experience, and as Dark Shadows, the audition, I really didn't know anything about it when I went for the audition. It was a soap opera, that's all I knew. And my mother was a soap opera watcher. Search for Tomorrow, General Hospital, so I kind of knew what that meant, daily performances. And I went in with a lot of little girls, and then they did a callback. I had to go back another day, and there were less little girls. And then I went back again, and there was one other little girl. And I happened to know her. She was a friend of mine in the business. Her name was Eileen Burrell, and she was very waif-like, very thin, long blonde hair, big blue eyes, and she had already portrayed a ghost in, I believe it was like a wagon train show or something like that. So we were playing, and I just kind of in the back of my mind knew that she would get the part because it was for a ghost. Well, much to my surprise, that wasn't the case, and I got the part. And in looking back, I believe, and I don't know this for fact, but I believe a lot of it may have had to do with the fact that I looked more like Jonathan Frid, who played Barnabas Collins, than she did. He was dark, and that's in my own mind, but I think that had a lot to do with the choice between Eileen and I.
Do you have to explain the character that she played on the show? Do you all know who she was?
Yeah, if anyone's
little
not
sister?
familiar.
So it's
Jonathan was a vampire, and Sarah Collins, his little sister who died at 10 years old from exposure, could have been pneumonia, could have been whatever. She was running around the cemetery getting all wet, and she got sick and she died. I got to, and I came back to him to not haunt him so much as to be his conscience, his Achilles heel, to plead for him to stop doing the bad things that he was doing. When I first went on the show, I was a ghost. And then they went back in time to 1795, I believe.
Yes.
There you go.
I went back in time, so I got to be alive. I got to be a live little girl. And I got to wear pink, and that was cute. I wasn't in my mop cap, in my dreary little outfit. So I got to be a live little girl as well, and then I had my big dying scene. Oh, Barnabas. Which really, I've had people ask me, was that scary? Was that upsetting? You were a little girl, you were dying? It wasn't anything like that. It was playing for me. It was pretend for me, completely and totally. And the character of Barnabas, played by Jonathan Frid, he was such a sweet man. He was a big man. He had hands like, I still remember, he had huge hands. And I was little. I was petite for my age. And he was just so nice to me and encouraging. And even if I was a little bit nervous, he would relax. We all make mistakes. Don't worry about it. Just do your thing. It'll be fine. I mean, he may not have said it in that vernacular, but that was the attitude that I got from him. All of the adults, Joan Bennett, who was a famous film star, was on the show, and no airs about her. She also was there to do a job, to work. She was nice to me. So it was a good experience for me in that way. So anyway, the dying scene was no more than pretend. The hardest thing for me to do in that dying scene was to keep my eyes closed. Because any Dark Shadows fan will tell you that little Sarah Collins' eyes were darting all the time. A lot of people accuse me of reading cue cards. They say, you were reading cue cards. That really honestly was not the case, because I didn't read that great that I could be reading cue cards and doing it at the same time. I was newsy is what it was. And if something was happening on set with a cameraman or the boom guy, or I wanted to know what was going on. I'm just a newsy person by nature, so I was doing this, but it came so easy to me that I also was paying attention to everything else that was going on. So in the big dying scene, it was rather difficult for me to stay there and keep my eyes closed and not go, "What are you doing over there?" But it wasn't scary even a little bit. It was a pleasure to have fun and be a little girl that got to play house, kind of, and run around in great long dresses with little ballet slippers and feel dressed up.
I'll ask questions throughout, but
I'm sorry, I talk too much.
No, she could do the whole thing. She could do the whole thing, and she should. But if you have questions at any time, just ask. And
Absolutely.
If you don't, I'll just keep throwing softballs at her.
I'm a very you will realize very quickly, I'm a very approachable person. I'm a very open person. I have nothing to hide. I had a great experience, and coming back and I've been doing Dark Shadows conventions for years. This is one of my first forays into a different venue, so I feel like a fringe person at this event, which is fine. But I'm very open about my experience, and I'm trying to use my experience in Dark Shadows to come back and start something new, be it web series or independent films or anything else anyone else wants me for. well, within limits. Yeah, I know, right? Stay away from Sal.
Yeah.
He's a scary Santa. I have no interest in being Mrs. Santa. But, within reason. I really would like to do something fun and productive and creative. So if anybody has any great
If there are
ideas.
creative Dark Shadows fans out there, we are really lucky to have someone as open as Sharon and so interested in being a part of, whatever we have in mind. So,
and because of that, I have developed a lot of really very close and important relationships in my life with fans that were once just fans, and now they are truly, dearly my friends. And I know about their lives, they know about my life, and I feel enriched by that. I feel blessed by that I've had that opportunity through Dark Shadows. So how cool is that? I have friends in other countries, for heaven's sakes.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about what it was like being a little kid on the set back then. How many kids? David was a part of the cast. But what was that like, being amongst all of the adults?
When I was on the show, and I was with adults a lot, but David Hennessy, who played the young boy at the time, who was about a year older than me, he had already been on the show for a little while before me. So he knew all the ins and outs of the studio, how different directors worked, and he had the lay of the land. So he was very helpful to me, because I was kind of shy. I know you find that hard to believe. But I was kind of shy, and I was a good girl, and I did what I was told, and that was about the extent of it. He would prod me and get me in a little bit more trouble. We had more fun, but he would get me in a little bit more trouble because of he already knew what was going on. There is one funny story what was funny, it's funny now. We were playing on set, and he told me that I should get into the coffin. We're going to play hide and seek. But he was telling me where to hide, which really kind of is silly, isn't it? But he said, being in the coffin would be a great place to hide. I'm like, It wasn't like it was scary. It was just weird, but okay. So I get in the coffin to check it out, and he closes the lids to see what that's like, and he sits on the top of the lid and won't let me out. And it wasn't, I do have a little bit of claustrophobia, and it wasn't like I couldn't breathe or anything like that, but it was unnerving. I want out, And coupled with the fact that I was supposed to perform very soon. I was going to get called to be on set very soon. I came about that close to missing a cue because David thought it was hysterical to keep me trapped in there. I didn't get in trouble that time, but that was fun.
Did you get in trouble?
There were a couple of incidents where people weren't really happy with myself or David because of our antics. One scene, and it's pretty noticeable, we have a scene where we're sitting stride-legged on a fallen tree, and one of us missed the line. or, you know, made up a new line. And it threw the whole thing off. But being the professionals that we were and understanding that this show was live to tape, there were no do-overs. Nobody was going to yell stop and start over again. We both were more than aware of the fact that you better just keep going, regardless. So when you watch it, it's rather comical because we're bantering back and forth and some of it is not making much sense. And then something clicks and we kind of got back on the road again. Well, when that scene ended and they went to commercial, there were a few adults in the darkness behind the cameras that were not too happy. But you know what? The fans had no clue. And, well, maybe now when you look at it, you do have a little clue that something went wrong there, but it wasn't that bad. Little things like that got the adults tense.
Was Mom on the set?
My mom was on the set, but she was very laid back. She got me there, she got me ready. Mostly she stayed in the dressing room. Back when I did Search for Tomorrow, though, I have to tell you a story. They had swinging doors with the little windows at the top, and you know, the light would go on, they were on air. And that was a 15-minute soap opera. It was live, real live. I was 8. This was the show that I had the dying scene from the asthma in. My mother, I could see her pacing outside the door. Her little, and my mom was less than 5 foot. I could see her little head pacing back and forth because she was a wreck that I would screw up and whatever. It didn't happen, glaringly, thank goodness. But on the set of Dark Shadows, we all know it was pretend, right? I don't want to upset anybody. The sets were relatively 3-sided, and it was beautiful. The sets were beautiful. You'd have 3 cameras. It was back in the day when they were behemoth cameras with big cords and whatnot. When I was not performing, when I was not, having to do my job, the guys behind the cameras and the booms and the sound effects guys, they were great. They were my buds. They'd let me climb on the cameras. They had like platforms around them, and they would let me climb up on there and mess with the stuff a little bit, enough that I felt special. And the stairways that went nowhere. In the foyer, there's a big beautiful staircase that goes up to a landing and then down to a door. Well, behind that door was nothing. There were, I believe, fire steps down from that. Those movable things that you see in the Home Depot. There was that kind of thing behind it. But I loved playing back there, and I loved playing with the pretend cobwebs. They would spray it. They had a machine that would spray these cobwebs, and it was like rubber. And you would pull it off. It was great, and roll it up in a ball. And at the time, Super Balls were very popular, and I thought I was making my own Super Ball. So, you have to remember, I was 10 years old. So the things that were fun to me, the things that I remember distinctly, not like the adults, obviously, but it was pretend. It was playhouse. I knew that everything was fake. The grass was AstroTurf. Again, I'm sorry if I upset anybody. I know, right?
The trees were real, right?
No, the rubber trees. Well, actually, one time I was walking through the cemetery and my dress caught on a tree, and I knocked the tree down. I knocked the tombstone down. The AstroTurf got pushed up. Yeah, it was.
What a neat thing
Bummer.
to be able to have that chunk of your childhood on tape somewhere that you can go back and watch it anytime.
The first time, when I was done, Dark Shadows. I did a few more little things, commercials, but then I went back to Philadelphia to my real life and my adolescence, and I didn't watch Dark Shadows. I never thought about it again. In 75 or 76, the show came back on after Mary Hartman. I don't remember what channel it was, but the show came back on, and I was very excited to watch it because I had not seen it. There were no DVDs back then. I had not seen the show in all those many years. And I remember sitting up at night watching it, and as soon as little Sarah came on, I got so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so cute! And I oftentimes say it was like watching home movies in a weird way. It brought back all those memories from being on set. I watched a couple episodes and then I didn't watch it again for a long time. I kind of just wasn't my thing. It was on late at night and I didn't watch it. Even within the last year, and we're talking, that show was 45 years ago. I cringe when I say that, but it was. That's the facts. A friend in the last year heard or read in an interview that I had done that I never watched the whole series from the beginning to the end, those over 1,200 episodes, and actually sent me the whole thing on DVD and said, you have to watch it. And I'm like, okay, fine, now I have no excuse, I will watch it. But yeah, it's, if you go into it not knowing anything about it and you're starting now and you go and you watch it, my first impression was, ooh, you know, technically speaking, it's kind of like just not as crisp as what I'm used to, you know, no CGI in it, which is a good thing ultimately, but no CGI in it, and every once in a while you see a boom, the microphone come into the screen, little things that are wrong, bloopers, and you kind of go, ooh, but if you let yourself get into the storyline of it, to the characters of it, I assure you, you will, if you haven't already watched it, you will get sucked in. You just will. It's a beautiful thing. It's gothic. There's romance. There's rivalries. There's a little craziness in there, no doubt about that. But really, is a beautiful thing. And how iconic. None of us, the adults even, no one had a clue that the longevity of it, that it would have lasted this long, that there would be new followers. You know, I have teenagers that come to conventions and they're just as excited as the people that ran home from school to watch it. So that's exciting. I mean, somebody called me iconic and I just thought that, I giggled, I thought that was funny. Me? Really?
You're royalty. You are Dark Shadows royalty.